They called me the ugly daughter and cut me off. I returned at my sister's wedding in red, silent but firm. I smiled, and my father forgot his lines. They used to call me the ugly one. Not behind my back, right to my face. My mother said it half jokingly. My father said it like a statement of fact. "Lucy got your brains, not your looks," he'd tell relatives, patting my shoulder as if that softened the blow. My sister Sarah was the family jewel, golden hair, perfect smile, every teacher's favorite. I was the shadow next to her glow. When I turned 18, the jokes stopped being jokes. After graduation, one argument ended with my father shouting that I was bad for the family image. That night, I packed my bags and left. At first, I slept on a friend's couch, one suitcase, 2 changes of clothes, and no plan. The silence from my family was louder than any insult. I took the first job I could find, cleaning offices at dawn, then waitressing through the night. I saved every dollar, skipped every luxury. My father once said I'd never survive without them, so I did. Within a year, I earned a scholarship for a business degree. I studied by day, worked by night, and built a version of myself that didn't need anyone's approval. Every cruel word became fuel. Every paycheck, a quiet victory. By 28, I had my own consulting firm, small but respected. My name was on contracts, my clients trusted my judgment, and my reflection no longer looked like a girl hiding behind others. The acne was gone, the braces replaced by a confident smile, and my posture straightened with years of self-discipline. I thought the past was buried for good, until that envelope arrived. Cream paper, gold letters. Sarah Martinez and Michael Fuentes invite you to celebrate their wedding. 10 years of silence, then this. I held the card between my fingers, wondering what game they were playing now. I spent 3 weeks preparing for that night. Not for them, for me. The red dress hugged every curve just right, my hair straightened, makeup flawless, but subtle. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the ugly daughter anymore. I saw a woman who had survived, who had built her own life from nothing. Entering the hotel ballroom, the chandeliers sparkled, the music floated softly. Guests turned their heads. Whispers rippled through the crowd. My father froze mid-handshake. My mother's eyes widened. I walked past them with steady heels, calm heart, and a quiet smile. The room didn't recognize me, but I knew exactly who I was. Sarah's eyes widened when I reached the head table. "Lucy," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. Her husband, Michael, looked between us, confused. "Do you know her?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "More than you think. I'm her sister." The room grew still. My father recovered first, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "We're so glad you could come," he said, voice clipped. "Of course," I replied evenly. "Family is everything, isn't it?" His jaw tensed, and I could see the unease ripple through him. I wasn't there to reconcile. I was there to make them witness everything they'd tried to erase. They seated me at the back, far from the important guests. I didn't mind. From my vantage point, I watched the ceremony unfold, the toasts, the speeches, the carefully curated perfection. When my father rose to give the traditional proud father speech, I could almost predict every word. "My daughter Sarah, our brightest jewel," his voice faltered when our eyes met. For the first time, he seemed uncertain, stripped of the control he always wielded. The room sensed it too. A subtle tension passed through the guests. I sipped my wine slowly, letting the silence press on them, letting them feel a fraction of the discomfort they had caused me for years. After the toast, Michael approached me at the bar, a polite distance between us. "So, you're Sarah's sister," he said carefully, voice low, as if testing the waters. "She never mentioned you." I smiled lightly, letting a trace of irony slip through. "She wouldn't. Some family stories don't fit the image." He studied me for a moment, curiosity mixed with genuine interest. "And what brings you tonight?" he asked. "Celebration," I said softly, "and observation." I watched as Sarah mingled, laughing with friends, the perfect bride in every sense. Her golden hair gleamed under the ballroom lights, every gesture poised, every smile calculated. I, meanwhile, held my drink lightly, posture straight, smile controlled. This wasn't about her. It was about the years I'd been erased, ignored, belittled. The power of invisibility had shifted. Now, I was seen, and they couldn't ignore it. Across the room, my father leaned toward my mother, whispering rapidly, faces pale. My presence was an unexpected variable in their carefully choreographed celebration. My mother's hand trembled as she adjusted her clutch. She realized that the daughter she had dismissed, called ugly, and shut out of the family was now standing before them, composed, elegant, and unmistakably successful. Every whisper and glance directed at me was a small victory, a testament to the life I had built alone. A waiter passed, refilling my glass. I took a deliberate sip, savoring the moment of calm. The music swelled as the first dance began, Sarah and Michael at the center of the floor, perfectly synchronized, every motion rehearsed for the eyes of the guests. I could feel the contrast, their curated perfection against my quiet strength, the product of resilience, determination, and countless nights of sacrifice. My father's jaw tightened as he noticed my calm, confident gaze sweeping across the ballroom, taking in every detail, every expression of shock or discomfort. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The photographer called for the family portrait. Everyone shuffled into position, smiles on their faces, carefully masking the tension. My father, always the orchestrator, looked at me sharply. "Lucy, come forward," he said, voice a mixture of command and unease. I moved with measured grace, stepping into the frame. Guests whispered behind me, murmurs of confusion and surprise. My sister's eyes widened, her composure faltering for the briefest second. I stood beside my parents, side by side with the family that had once rejected me. The photographer adjusted the camera, clicking the shutter. Flash. A frozen moment. The image captured the past and present in one frame, the family's pride, and me, the daughter they called ugly, now transformed, unshakable, undeniable. The room felt smaller, every whisper louder. They were forced to acknowledge me, not as the shadow of Sarah, but as a woman who had built her own legacy, who had survived their cruelty and thrived. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line, a futile attempt to maintain authority. My father's hands clenched at his sides, the only betrayal of his internal unease. Sarah, radiant and perfect, tried to smile naturally, but her eyes betrayed panic. She glanced at Michael, who was clearly confused by the subtle shift in dynamics. They couldn't understand this was never about the wedding. It was about recognition, justice, and presence. As the photographer clicked away, I let my gaze wander over the crowd. Guests' eyes lingered on me, questioning, curious, captivated. I allowed a small, deliberate smile to form, nothing boastful, only a quiet acknowledgement of the years I had survived and the strength I now carried. My presence alone rewrote the narrative, turning 10 years of silence and dismissal into a tableau of quiet, undeniable triumph. The portrait session ended. I stepped back with elegance, letting the tension remain, knowing that the image would linger in their minds, proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I had flourished without them. The whispers continued, but I didn't flinch. I had arrived not as a shadow, not as the ugly daughter, but as a force they could no longer ignore. This was only the beginning. Later, the dinner began. The long tables gleamed with crystal, silverware, and floral arrangements. I sat at the back, observing, letting the noise of polite laughter and clinking glasses wash over me. My family tried to maintain their composure, but the subtle shifts in their glances betrayed their anxiety. They kept moving their heads toward me, whispering behind hands, pretending to engage with guests while stealing glances at the woman they once dismissed. I let them watch. Every forkful I raised, every sip of wine, every small laugh at a waiter's joke was deliberate, a silent message. I had become my own person, unbending and unbroken. Sarah's friends, unaware of our history, commented on my elegance. "She looks amazing," one whispered, passing the comment to another. Their surprise gave me a small thrill. They didn't know my story, didn't know the years of struggle, of isolation, of reinvention behind this composed exterior. My mother caught my eye briefly, and I let my gaze meet hers, calm, unwavering, a hint of challenge beneath the surface. She looked away first, a subtle admission that the girl she had dismissed had returned stronger, unshaken. The speeches began. My father, attempting to reclaim authority, stood and raised his glass. "To my daughter Sarah, our pride and joy," he began, but his voice wavered as he scanned the room. His eyes fell on me. That single look, the moment he realized I had returned transformed, independent, and confident, froze him mid-sentence. My mother pressed her lips together, struggling to maintain composure. Guests noticed, murmured, some exchanged curious glances. The hierarchy my family had long relied on was suddenly unsettled, and I felt a subtle, satisfying power in the quiet. I let the moment stretch. I didn't rush to intervene, didn't seek confrontation. This was not revenge in the loud, dramatic sense. It was a lesson in presence, in acknowledgement. I was there, undeniable, elegant, and untouchable. Every gesture, every measure movement became an unspoken assertion. The daughter they once rejected had returned, not to plead, not to apologize, but to exist on her own terms. The tension thickened, and yet I remained serene, sipping my wine, observing, cataloging their reactions for later, when the true impact of my return would unfold. As the dinner progressed, I noticed Michael stealing curious glances. He seemed to sense the undercurrent, though unaware of the full story. Sarah, perfectly poised, yet visibly tense, tried to maintain her role as the family's jewel. Every laugh she forced, every comment she offered felt slightly strained. I could see her mind working, calculating, adjusting to the presence she had never expected. And I realized the power of my transformation wasn't just in my appearance or career. It was in the calm, controlled confidence that radiated from me, the unmistakable aura of someone who had survived, thrived, and returned to claim her space. I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The night was long, but every passing moment strengthened my position. The whispers, the glances, the small disruptions in their orchestrated perfection, all of it belonged to me now. I wasn't just attending a wedding. I was reclaiming my narrative, piece by piece, glance by glance, moment by moment. And I would not leave until they fully realized the daughter they once called ugly had returned, not diminished, but elevated beyond their expectations. After dinner, the first dances began. Sarah and Michael moved gracefully across the floor, the spotlight on them, every step rehearsed, every smile calculated. I remained at my table, sipping wine, watching the performance of perfection. Guests clapped politely, their eyes occasionally flicking toward me, sensing something unusual. My father's posture was rigid, his smile strained. My mother's hand trembled slightly on the back of her chair. I let them stew in their unease, the subtle disruption I had become rippling through the room without a single word from me. When it was time for toasts, my father reluctantly gestured for me to come forward. I rose slowly, feeling every eye on me. Each step toward the stage was deliberate. I didn't hurry. The soft click of my heels echoed faintly on the polished floor. Murmurs passed through the crowd. I reached the podium, and the microphone caught my voice effortlessly. "Good evening," I began, steady, calm. "I'd like to toast to Sarah and Michael for a lifetime of happiness." Polite applause followed. I continued, each word measured, precise, carrying the weight of 10 years of absence, growth, and self-made success. I could see my father's jaw tighten as my tone, calm and composed, suggested a presence and confidence he had never anticipated. My mother's eyes shifted, searching the crowd for an ally, someone to distract from the daughter they had dismissed. Sarah's face betrayed tension, the perfect veneer cracking, as she realized I wasn't just a shadow anymore. My speech remained neutral, yet each sentence echoed message. I had returned not for reconciliation, but to assert my existence, my worth, and the life I had built without their approval. When I stepped down, the whispers grew louder. Eyes followed me as I returned to my seat, unhurried, composed, and elegant. Michael approached subtly, giving a small nod of recognition, his curiosity now tinged with understanding. I allowed a faint, controlled smile, savoring the satisfaction of being seen exactly as I had become, strong, independent, and undeniably present. The room had shifted. The family's perfect image had cracked, and I was at the center of the silent tremor. Every glance in my direction was a small acknowledgement of a truth they could no longer deny. I had survived, and I had returned on my own terms. By the end of the evening, I could feel the tension radiating from my parents and sister. Each smile they forced, each polite word, each sidelong glance, carried the weight of the years they had tried to erase. I didn't need to speak further. The silent power of my presence had said more than I ever could with words. The daughter they once called ugly had returned, fully transformed, and unshakably confident. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning the room, letting the reality of my survival sink in for them and for me. The evening wound down, and the reception continued with laughter, dancing, and polite chatter. I stayed near the edge of the dance floor, letting the night unfold around me while maintaining a quiet, deliberate presence. My father avoided my gaze whenever he could, my mother's hands fidgeted with her clutch, and Sarah's smiles had lost their ease, replaced by a subtle tension I recognized instantly. Every subtle glance they threw my way was a reminder that the ugly daughter they had dismissed was no longer invisible. At one point, Michael approached me, offering a polite smile. "You handled that beautifully," he said quietly. I nodded, accepting the compliment without arrogance. The satisfaction wasn't in his words, it was in the undeniable shift in the room's energy. Guests whispered, speculated, stared. The family's perfect facade wavered under the weight of my calm confidence. I realized then that 10 years of struggle, rejection, and perseverance had culminated not in loud vengeance, but in the quiet assertion of my existence. As the music played and couples swayed across the floor, I caught my father's eye once more. The pride and superiority he had worn like armor were gone, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. My mother glanced at me, lips pressed together, a forced composure masking discomfort. Even Sarah avoided meeting my gaze directly, the illusion of control slipping from her hands. I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile, knowing the lesson was complete. The night drew to a close. Guests departed in clusters, exchanging polite farewells and lingering glances. I walked through the ballroom calmly, heels clicking on the floor, shoulders squared, head held high. The family that had cast me aside, labeled me, and excluded me had witnessed the result of their neglect. I had returned not with anger or tears, but with elegant success and unshakable confidence. The ugly daughter was gone. In her place stood a woman they could neither ignore nor diminish. The evening ended, but the impact of my return would linger far longer than the music or champagne ever could.